Hello, and welcome back to Prism and Company. My name is Colin, and on the docket today, an entry in my series examining the 7 principles of art. Today's principle... Movement is one of those things we all experience every day, but what is movement in art? Movement is all about directing the eye, making something look like it's in motion, or making your eye move from place to place. We're going to take a look at 3 different kinds of movement today. Implicit movement, explicit movement, and assumed movement. And we're actually going to take a look at explicit first, and then implicit, and then assumed. There we go. I moved the principles around. If you will, let me put on my monocle. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's take a look at the first. Coming in from the Joe Sparrow, we have the 8 of Wands. And oh my God, this image is just so cool. It is emblematic of what the Joe Sparrow really kind of speaks to me. It is funny, it's quirky, it's whimsical, but it's also really smart and takes the meanings of the cards and just like tweaks them 20 degrees and sets you on an axis that you didn't quite expect. Now here we have explicit movement, or it is movement that is being shown directly on the card. We all know what a rocket does, and here we have someone firing off 8 different rockets in all these different directions. And there's lots of visual cues cluing us into the fact that things are moving. Right off the bat, from the cannon here, whatever it is, we see action lines. And not only is it bright and poppy like an explosion, but we can see arrows pointing us out. It's literally pointing us in the direction that these rockets are going to be moving. From there, we have action lines in the form of smoke trails that are telling us the exact ways in which the rockets are moving. I want to say missiles so bad. Are they missiles or are they rockets? I don't know. I'm probably going to say both, so just roll with me if I say both. But this rocket, missile, whatever, what's like the celebrity mashup for rocket and missile? Mocket? Ristle? This Ristle, that sounds like a Scooby. This Ristle is traveling here, and we can trace its line exactly back to its point of origin. You know, the smoke might have drifted a little bit, but we can tell that it was moving based on where it's been. And again, it's being reinforced by the colors here because we have the bright fire of the fuel coming out of this Ristle, and it's fading into smoky gray. And it's coming in all the different directions. It's going to each rocket and being consistent. We also have the directionality of these rockets showing us that like this one is coming at the screen. These guys are going to the side. This one's going up and away. This one's coming up towards us. There's lots of cool little perspective shifts that are giving us even more movement rather than just one plane, like a 2D plane. It's pushing it into the 3rd dimension, kind of pushing and pulling things everywhere. And then finally, we have the opposite action of our cannon here, or launcher, whatever. This shooty gun coming in from the top right. We have arrows pointing our eye back in the other direction. This image is very emblematic of good movement that keeps your eye moving but on the composition, because the gun fires the rockets out, they explode and fire you back here, and then it explodes back out, so your eye never wants to stop moving, and the entire time it's tracing lines because it's following curves of the smoke, and it's going and it's pushing and it's pulling. How beautiful for the 8 of Wands to have a composition that reinforces constant, unending, unyielding moving of the eye all around. Let's take a look at implicit movement. From the Marielle Tarot, we have Temperance. And oh my God, look at this image. It's so freaking good. Here we have a tiger in the water. And unlike the very explicit movement in the Joe Sparrow, here we have some more implicit movement. Things are moving, but it's a little harder to tell exactly how or why. Now, not super hard because most of us know how water kind of works and flows and wind, but there's nothing directly to see. What exactly am I talking about here? Let's take the tufts of hair on the tiger's eye. They are moving, we can tell that because they're out, but there's nothing directly showing us. There is no smoke trail tracing where the air came from. We are implying that the hair is moving because of what it's doing, not because of what exactly we're seeing. We're not seeing the cause, we're seeing the effect. That is implicit movement because it is being implied. The waves are slightly more explicit because we can kind of trace the pattern of the water as it goes down, but in some ways it's still implicit. We're not really seeing what's moving the water. We're not seeing the wind or the current. We're just seeing the outcome in the action. But the thing that really gets me in this card, it always almost spooks me a little bit, is the implicit and explicit movement of the figure itself. This tiger is not moving. We can tell because even though its fur is being blown, hello, its paw is raised, none of its muscles are being activated. It doesn't look like it's lunging or charging. It is staring directly at the canvas, eyes unflinching as the water and wind and elements move around it. It is implicitly, completely still. And sort of, oh, goodness gracious, words are not coming to me sometimes. Boy, what is it called when you have a thing that you don't expect it to be there? It doesn't matter. Sort of counterintuitively, let's say, something that is very still can also be movement. Stillness is a form of movement. Movement most commonly in a composition is like the Joe Sparrow. It is something moving from point A to point B, drawing your eye, but something being very static and focused also moves your eye. It just moves it to a single place. And again, the intensity of this is so intense, it's so raw and unyielding that your eye always wants to come back to this tiger because it feels dangerous, and our brains are just kind of like triggered to come back to this predator staring at us, that no matter if the wind is blowing our eyes off the page, it comes back to the tiger. If we get caught up in the tides, it comes back to the tiger. Always, our eye gets brought back. And what a cool way to look at temperance, the idea of craziness all around you, but always coming back to this stable point, even if that point is intense. Let's take a look at assumed movement. Here we have the drowned from the Japaritsa Tarot. That's how I'm going to say it. The drowned represents movement, but we can't actually tell exactly what's going on here. This is a work of complete fantasy. It is a figure. We can, pretty well tell that. But the space that they're in is very ill-defined in an extremely beautiful way. It is flowing and dripping and moving. And I say all of those terms because it looks water-like, but I don't actually know that to be true. For all I know, this could be a crystalline cavern where the walls have, for years and millennia, formed dense, immovable crystal. However, visually speaking, the eye wants to flow down. It's following the line of the figure as it goes, and it's following these action lines. Going all the way back to our first image with the Joe Sparrow, we have action lines showing us explicitly what's happening with the rockets or the whistles. Here, we see the same action lines, but there's no cause or effect. There's nothing they're moving to or from. They're simply happening. This movement is implied because it is implying that something is moving or happening without us really even knowing what's going on. This happens all the time in abstract art. You use the smear of the paintbrush, the directionality of the strokes to imply movement, to get the eye going from one spot to another. It's sort of interesting though, where Temperance, that last card, was always bringing our eye back to the tiger. Our eye is really kind of being drawn to this like X marks the spot down here. Everything in this composition unfolds and then wraps itself up back right here. Our eyes naturally are drawn to human figures though, so there is an element that like breaches us back up and says like, okay, humans are something I recognize. In this swirling, beautiful pool of color, my eye is kind of drawn to the thing that I recognize the most. That allows us to climb back up the composition visually and then fall back down again. Kind of a cool way to look at the Hanged Man here, the more traditional name for the drowned, in that it's a composition you sort of get stuck in because you're always being led down here. It's heavy, it's stuck, but the human element is the thing that can kind of claw you back out, but you'll always be fighting against it. A neat little way that movement might be read with this card. Let's recap. As with all these principles, there's lots of different ways to use them, and there's lots of different principles also at work here. It's never just movement in a composition. Things are always colliding and overlapping in really, really unique, cool ways. However, I think these cards really do show off movement well. We have very explicit movement where we see the cause and the effect and the actual travel of something physically moving on the page. We have some implicit movement where movement is being implied, whether it's very actionful like the wind or the waves, or extremely still, ooh, spooky. And then there is assumed movement where you can't even tell exactly what's going on, but you're kind of assuming that this world of crazy color is moving and flowing. Either way, I think movement can be used very well to draw our eye to different parts of the composition and help inform us what is important to look at in a card for a reading. A lot of folks say that they rely on their intuition to draw them towards parts of a card that are jumping out to them. Why is your eye being drawn there, though? The piece de resistance, the thing that draws your eye, might be the important part to a reading, but it might also be the thing that is drawing your eye up. Maybe the water is the most important part of reading this Temperance card in this moment. Maybe it's the clouds behind, or maybe it's the tiger staring you in the face. It's hard to say, and that's the beauty of tarot, is that there are no right or wrong answers. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys again about another one of these 7 principles of art as they relate to tarot. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.